There's a 4-part story and a few extras here and there along the way from Class Comics of a badass demon who used to be an enforcer for hell who's trying to redeem himself in the eyes of heaven while fighting off a cult that worships him and other demons who are trying to drag him back down. This is the tale of the Taro Demon, Deimos.
I'm in love with the hero. I'm in love with the one who will.
Okay, comic book people of the world, let's talk about the Deimos series from Class Comics. This incorporates issues number 0 through 3. Issue number 0 was a prequel to the series and was written and drawn by Patrick Fillion. This issue is a prequel to the series and it sets up what Deimos is setting out to do. It set up that Deimos has rejected hell, even though at one point he was one of their top demons. It also has several different biographies on both the allies and the villains that are set up in this. The biographies in this are awesome. Some of the characters being introduced is Cardinal, who happens to be a guardian angel, and a mystic by the name of Billy. Deimos' ex-boyfriend is a character known as Sethan, who's also a former demon. The leader of hell just happens to be a character known as Bob. Just Bob. And I will say this, he has a huge, ginormous schlong, even for Class Comic standards. When issue number 1 comes out, Logan takes over for the artwork. I love Logan's artwork, and his take on Deimos is awesome. Unlike the previous issue, which was more just a setup for the story, this one delves right into it. Cardinal is kidnapped by a cult that worships Deimos, and Deimos slightly reverts to his evil ways for a bit. This is where you're really seeing that this title is much different from a lot of other Class Comic titles, just because of the dark overtones. You also start to see that Deimos' allies may not be exactly who they say they are, but then again, everything is kind of twisted and turned, so you're not really quite sure what is real and what isn't. Issue number 2 is also drawn by Logan, and this one we get to see a bit more about Sethan. Being that Sethan is Deimos' ex-lover, they do have a lot of chemistry with each other. This issue shows that Sethan seemingly also wants to reject hell and to try to redeem himself in the eyes of heaven. This issue also has Bob telling one of his number 1 lieutenants, Azagoth, to summon one of their number 1 demons who happens to be known as Obscene. Obscene is not a demon you want to mess with. He not only takes out Deimos, but he also kills Sethan in issue number 3. Issue number 3 is where there's a shifting in the story. Alessio Slonimsky comes in as a new artist. It took approximately 8 years between issues number 2 and 3 to come out. Right off the bat, you can see that there is a bit of a rush in this story just to complete it. This is probably because there's several other stories that took place with Deimos that took place in this 8 years. One of which that's fairly important is the Deimos Dead of Winter story that brings in Mac McKenzie, who happens to be Deimos' new boyfriend, which this character shows up at the beginning of issue number 3. This issue does wrap up a lot of the loose ends, with Deimos being redeemed, or at least partially redeemed. He gets his wings, but he still has his horns. Unfortunately though, there are some loose ends, one of which may lead into the next story, which may lead into something that's even more earth-shattering than this story. This entire series is so incredibly brutal. I mean, it is Class Comics, so there is lots and lots of sex, but there's also lots of blood and killing. There is one major death that took place. It totally took me by surprise. I won't spoil who it was, but I was just like, damn, I can't believe they did that. I'm personally a huge fan of Deimos. He's one of my top 3 characters from Class Comics, so seeing a conclusion to this story was something that I've been waiting for a long time. I will admit that I had to go back and reread issues number 0, 1, and 2, and also pull out some of the other Class Comics that also had Deimos involved. The story takes place in the not too distant future of Gateway City, which, if you're a fan of Class Comics, you know that there are many adventures that take place there. So I'm appreciative of Patrick Fillion kind of linking together certain characters. I'm personally hoping with the conclusion of this story that this is going to open up the way for Deimos to team up with some other characters in the Class Comics universe. He's done this a few times in the past, like Zahn, but I would really like to see this happen much more often. This is a great story. I did enjoy issues 0, 1, and 2 more so than issue number 3, but that's more because I think that issue number 3 was done just so they can complete it. Not that that's saying anything negative about issue number 3, I just feel as though Patrick Fillion in Class Comics was like, hey, maybe we should complete this story so that we can move on. And after 8 years of waiting for issue number 3 to come out, I do feel as though that is a very rational idea to do. Let me end this video at this point. I love this series. Deimos is one of my favorite characters from Class Comics. If you're interested in reading this story, you want to go to classcomics.com and you can download PDFs from there. With that, thank you guys for watching me in this video. If you haven't done it yet, check out my Patreon side. You become one of my patrons, you get to see some extra pictures, videos, photo shoots, behind the scene things that I only show to patrons. Check it out when you get a chance. I totally appreciate it. And with that, I'll join you guys with another video very soon. Peace, love, namaste, and I'll see you guys later.
Always win. He's a prominent figure.
Issue number 3 of Deimos, this would be a great way to start sowing the seeds of a major villain that would have to unite all of the superheroes within the Class Comics universe in order to take this guy down. At least that's something that I think would be a really awesome idea.